This morning I was already I got one more. This is the last class.
I'm so glad that she's going. What are you doing there?
I'll tell you later.
He's okay.
Yeah, he's all right. Yeah, and the
Whatever it is.
You get surge.
Could very well be.
Joan, Joan, you want to come up front?
Is that taken? That's taken?
Yes.
Okay, great.
For asking.
Can't sit in front of my camera, sweetie.
Oh, where's your camera?
Right here. You got. That's why we had it. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't even see it.
Yeah. See, I'm taping it. So when you moved.
Oh, that's wonderful. Janet, taking it.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Right there. See her right there with the lady.
You look familiar.
Sorry to bother. I was coming straight to the thing, but they wouldn't let me.
How true.
But I am. So good to see you. Brought you a kiss. I hope this. I must have got not this one.
Maybe taking a leap for an elevator.
It's so lovely to see you. Going to the lecture tomorrow.
What is it? Back up, back up. What is it? I know, yeah. It's good. And the subject is
Somebody's sitting there. Nobody's sitting there.
I know. Big.
Right away, I did. You're right. Oh, come on. I don't ever.
It's beautiful outdoors, young crowd. It's not Palmetto. So I hope you can tell us something. Just
I'm a trouble.
yeah.
Listen, everybody thinks everybody just wants to get and you're one. Like you're average person now.
Hello. I'm just here to be the introduction person for the program. But I wanted to do one thing, and it is very important because of Judy just said to me that the way they've got the equipment set up for recording, that you must turn off your cell phones. And there's not a meeting that we go to that we don't ask, and it doesn't happen all the time, or all the people, some of the time. All right. Okay, cell phones were part of my responsibility. The other part of my responsibility, which is a good part, is to introduce you all to Nancy Wolf. And Nancy Wolf is the new head of foundation for all of LifeSpace. And, if I may give a little plug, we've all dealt with the question of what is the foundation. For the last 5 years that I've been at Harbor's Edge, I had a hard time figuring it out, and I was on the committee for a number of years. The foundation is a concept that will be fleshed out over the next 6 months to a year, so that it will be presented to you in a very different manner than it has been in the past. And all I ask is, in introducing you to Nancy, that you just hear her background and know that she's got a big job and she makes the big bucks, and she's had the experience of major national foundations. So the decision by Jesse to rethink the foundation is in all of our best interests. And we're looking at projects that will involve changing the health center, knocking down the little administration building and turning it into a memory health area. We're looking at doing major changes that will have CapEx relationships and make life better for all of us here at Harbor's Edge. And it's not like pie in the sky. We'll start with Nancy meeting you in a broad group, but also providing us with the mechanics of how the foundation is going to be changed. So I ask you to be kind to Nancy Wolf. Come over. Give her a Harbor's Edge welcome.
Well, perfect. Well, thank you. And I know that you are not here to meet me, but I appreciate this opportunity to see all of you, to meet you, and I'd love the opportunity to talk more. As Nancy said, can you tell she was actually part of the interview process? So she might be a little partial, but I appreciate her partnership. And then also really want to call out, we have several Foundation Advisory Committee members here, as well as our leader, Linda Rosenkrantz in the back. So just grateful for their partnership as we really take on new opportunities, one of which is around brain health. And so we're excited today. I'm actually going to turn it over to David Green, who is with the FAU, so that he can introduce our guest speaker.
Thank you. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for having us here at your beautiful, beautiful Harbor's Edge home. I'm David Green, AVP for Development at Florida Atlantic University's Charles E. Schmidt College of Medicine, literally 10 minutes down the road. With great thanks to your Health and Wellness Committee for inviting us today to hear from a truly extraordinary FAU faculty member. I also wish to thank Dr. Joseph Auslander, who's been key to the special relationship between FAU and Harbor's Edge. And thanks, of course, to Dr. Sarah Ham, who is always on the lookout for health and wellness enhancement activities for everyone. And thanks to Nancy Flynn, where are you? She keeps me on my toes, as all of us. Now, to the star of today's show. Dr. Richard Issaccson is a world-renowned neurologist and researcher who specializes in the maintenance of brain health through the aging process. He serves as director of the Center of Brain Health at FAU Schmidt College of Medicine. Dr. Issaccson engages with patients who have family histories of cognitive decline. His goal is to work with patients long before they have any manifestation of disease, and then develop personalized strategies to delay or possibly even prevent disease. He completed his residency in neurology at Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center, Harvard Medical School, and he comes to us most recently as the director of the Alzheimer's Prevention Clinic at Weill Cornell, where he served as an associate professor of neurology at Weill Cornell Medicine in New York Presbyterian. His many accomplishments notwithstanding, Dr. Issaccson is a humanistic healer. He has touched me in the short time I have gotten to know him, and I know by the end of this session today, you will all feel the same. So please welcome Dr. Issaccson.
Good afternoon, everybody. Wow, that was loud. Can you guys hear me? I usually say, can you hear me okay, but that was loud. Okay. David, thank you so much for the very kind introduction. It's great to see everyone. Thanks for coming out. There's like it's a packed house. You should have sold tickets. You're all scared. No, but we don't want you to be scared. We want you to be empowered. So someone said that we're scared, and that's why we're here, but don't be scared. The take-home point that you're going to learn today is that we are not powerless in the fight against cognitive decline. There's no one magic pill, although I got some snake oil in my pocket I can sell you. You got a free, oh, I'm sorry, it's being recorded. I can't roam? Oh, no. I was going to do a dance too. But if I dance, I'm going to have to dance on this side. I'm out of the frame. Okay. I want you to know that you're not powerless in the fight against cognitive decline. And anyone at any age can make a brain healthy choice today to have an impact tomorrow. Does that sound like a plan?
Yep.
We less fearful now? Because fear is paralyzing, right? We want to spring you into action and give you some hope. Okay. Again, we don't have the magic pill or magic bullet, but I think there are things that we can all do. So my name is Richard Issaccson. I'm back in Boca Raton. My family actually moved here from Long Island. There's like a route from Brooklyn to Boca I heard about. So my family moved from Flatbush to Suffolk County for a while, and then to Boca Raton in 1993. They sold the house in Long Island. They disconnected the phone. They never told me. I was in med school. It was awesome. I still talk to my therapist about it, but I'm clearly not over it yet. And then I came here to do my medical training after Boston. I was at University of Miami. I did internal medicine. I then went back to Boston. I went back to Miami for a while. And then I was just in New York City for the last 8 or 9 years. But as they say, one route from Brooklyn to Boca, and I moved actually from the Upper East Side of Manhattan to Boca Raton about 6 months ago, post-COVID, to be closer to my family. And it's been really amazing to join FAU, Florida Atlantic University, Schmidt College of Medicine, not that far, like kind of down the street and a little over there. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to build a center that can truly make a difference and an impact, not just on a local level, but on an international level as well. And the goal is to try to empower people to make brain healthy choices in their lives, because we're living longer, right? What's the life expectancy nowadays? 95. I don't know if we're that. 100? Oh boy, I don't know. I think we're in like the mid or high 70s. So I think life expectancy is going up. We're going to be, most people who are born today are going to live into their 80s or longer, and that's great. But it's not just about living longer, it's about living better. And again, today we're going to try to talk about some strategies. Who in here has a family member that has been diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease? No, two. At least 30% or so, at least. So I empathize, and I'm sorry. I have 4 family members that have been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. If I was using slides, I'd show a picture of my cousin Orwin's bar mitzvah back in May of 1946. And there's actually 4 people in that one picture, in my family picture, with Alzheimer's disease that was developed over time. So I understand that Alzheimer's disease is personal for many of us, and I understand that it's something that's fearful. And again, I can't portend to have all the answers, but I want everyone to leave today to realize that there are things that we can do at any age. And if you have kids or grandchildren, they can do something even more. Okay? So, first of all, you can interrupt me if you have questions. I try to keep things, kind of laid back. If someone has a question, great. Let's start with a question.
You differentiating between Alzheimer's and dementia?
Great. That was what I was going to cover. Now. You're hired. She's a plant, clearly. Right on schedule. That was great. So, what's the difference between Alzheimer's disease and dementia? And that's a really, really important question. Dementia is an umbrella term that includes a variety of conditions that can affect cognitive function as we age. Dementia includes Alzheimer's, which is the most common form of neurodegenerative dementia, which is a brain disease. About 60 to 70% of the time a person has dementia, they end up having a diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease. But there are lots of times when people do not have Alzheimer's disease. There are other causes. There's vascular dementia. So we know about having heart attacks and strokes, and that's caused by high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and diabetes. But if you have a brain attack or a stroke, in certain areas of the brain that are responsible for thinking skills and memory, then that person may develop something called vascular cognitive decline or vascular dementia. And actually, there's a lot of overlap here, because if someone is diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, about 30% of the time they also have a mixed picture of both vascular and Alzheimer's related cognitive decline. Those are 2 of the most common. There's something called Lewy body dementia. Has anyone heard of that? few people. That's actually much more common than we had thought about when I was in medical school. Lewy body dementia, someone you've probably heard of, Robin Williams, was diagnosed with Lewy body dementia. There's other people out there that will be talking about dementia, their Lewy body dementia journey in the coming years. There's also something called frontotemporal dementia. Have you heard of that at all? Frontotemporal dementia. This is more uncommon, but it's more in the frontal lobes, front part of the brain that's responsible for behavior. And most of those people start having symptoms in their 50s or 60s. But if you're in their 70s or 80s, it's very uncommon to be diagnosed with that. There's other conditions that can cause cognitive decline related to dementia. Has anyone heard of the term aphasia? Okay, so aphasia is the inability or reduced ability to produce speech or language or understand speech or language. Anyone see the news today about someone that announced that they had aphasia? Bruce Willis, yeah. So today, Bruce's family was very courageous, and Bruce Willis announced that he'll be stepping back from acting because of aphasia. And aphasia is a problem where production of speech or understanding of speech impairs that person's ability to interact in daily life. Any form of dementia impacts a person's ability to conduct themselves in everyday life. That's the definition of dementia. When any cognitive condition, no matter what they are, because there's lots of different causes, impairs that person's ability to take care of themselves. They need extra help. They need to, from everyday activities, paying bills, putting their, clothes together, making meals, going to the doctors, things like that. So people can have dementia from a variety of causes. Alzheimer's is the most common cause. And Alzheimer's is the most common cause characterized by progressive short-term memory loss. You lose your keys, your cell phones, and things just cascade from there. But because these conditions are also brain diseases, you can also have psychiatric changes as well as sleep changes. So people's mood may change, their behavior may change, they may be more anxious, more irritable, more agitated, and they may not be able to sleep in terms of the normal cadence of life. So people, though, before you develop the dementia phase of the illness, can have mild changes. And the term that's sometimes used is called mild cognitive impairment or mild cognitive disorder, where the person is having glitches, but they can still take care of themselves. And then when I said forgetting the keys and forgetting your cell phone, I saw some people making sounds. Me too, okay? But it doesn't mean that a person has dementia or the early signs of dementia, because I forgot my laptop when I came here. I didn't know if I was using slides or not, but I forgot my laptop. That's not a good thing. I better get a brain transplant in the parking lot. We're running a sale on brain transplants after this talk. American Express and cash. We need some good brain donors before we do the brain transplants, but that's another story. People forgetting their keys or their cell phones and finding it later, that can be a part of normal aging. There are some things about the brain that change that are expected as we age. It may take longer for a person to remember someone's name. Oh, what's that guy? What's his name? It's on the tip of my tongue. The very good-looking neurologist from FAU. What's that guy's name? Aha. And then it comes back to you later. Tip of the tongue syndrome with a word is not really expected to be part of a dementia per se, but could be an expected change with normal cognitive aging. It could also be vascular issues and other things, but tip of the tongue is a very characteristic aging sign. It may take someone longer to learn information. So one of the techniques that I use, I'm a neurologist by trade. I'm a cognitive neurologist, Alzheimer's prevention specialist, but I do have some additional training and education. There's going to be a trick that I use today. I'm going to cycle on the material what I want you to remember at least 3 times. It's not because I'm repeating myself because I've forgotten what I've said, but I'm going to say to you over and over that you are not powerless in the fight against Alzheimer's disease and cognitive decline, and you can make an impact by making a change today to impact your brain health tomorrow. And I'm going to say that a few times, not because I'm trying to, test your memories, but because people have lots of distraction. Cell phones, something moves, someone walks in, someone's talking next to you. If you cycle on the material 3 times, you're more likely to retain that material. So that's a strategy that I use. In a technologically, crazy world, I don't see too many people texting right now. So thank you, appreciate it. In the usual lectures that I give, everyone's texting, taking selfies, posting on Instagram. I'm not on social media, not my thing. But distraction and inattention causes a person not to remember something. If someone's not paying attention to something, they can't encode the memory and store it. So lots of people that come to see me that say, oh, doc, my memory is not working. We can do cognitive assessments to figure out it's actually an attention problem, and we can do something about that. There's vitamin deficiencies. People that have a little depression, mild depression, anxiety, people that are sleep deprived can present saying my memory's not working, but it's really a attention processing problem, and you can't get the memory in, you can't get the memory out. Does that make sense? So there's other different types of cognitive changes. There's a language, which we talked about with Bruce Willis and aphasia. We talked about processing speed, how quickly a thought goes from point A to point B, and that's also something that actually slows down with aging, and that can be expected with age. But there's a part of cognition, brain function, called executive function, higher order processing, that can change with vascular changes. So if people may have high blood pressure, high cholesterol, diabetes, they may have that aspect of memory or of thinking skills that are impaired. So the goal of our practice is to try to understand when a person is saying, I have a memory complaint, we can do cognitive assessments and talk to the person, get a clinical history, doctor talking to the patient, doctor also talking to a loved one, a partner, spouse, a son, a daughter, a grandchild, to get a sense from that person who knows the person with memory or cognitive changes better and get their opinion on things. So that's how we try to make diagnoses, by taking a history and talking to the person. So that was a long-winded description of what dementia is versus Alzheimer's, but hopefully we covered that one. Any other questions before I continue?
Is it necessarily hereditary?
Great question. So is Alzheimer's or dementia necessarily hereditary? And that's a great question. So the number one risk factor for Alzheimer's disease is advancing age. Okay, age is the number one risk factor. As we get older, we have increased risk of Alzheimer's. When you hit the age of 85, about 42% of people have Alzheimer's. It's a big number, 4 out of 10. 4 out of 10, that's what the statistics say. That's what the National Institute of Health website says, and if the government tells you, it's got to be true, right? Right. So the statistics are 40%. And whether that's true or not, I'm not sure. Once you've hit the age of 91, every year that you go down, it's all downhill from there. The risk goes down. So once you hit 91, life's easy, right? Of course. What did it say? You're 91, great. You're in the clear, perfect. All right, where's the celebration? No, that's great. So age is the number one risk factor for Alzheimer's disease and cognitive decline. The second biggest risk factor is kind of somewhere between, maybe there's a component of genetics, but just because you have a family member with Alzheimer's disease does not mean you're going to get Alzheimer's disease. People that have Alzheimer's disease and have other risk factors like high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and diabetes, sound like a broken record here. These vascular risk factors that are vascular risk factors for heart attacks and strokes are also risk factors for cognitive decline in Alzheimer's disease. So does high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and diabetes cause Alzheimer's? I'm going to say not really, but it can press the fast forward button on cognitive
Does it
decline.
contribute?
Does it contribute? Oh boy. Do you want me to give you the scientific answer or the?
I have a question to ask you, but
Yeah.
I don't mean to interrupt.
No, it's okay.
Okay, the question that I have is
Yeah.
going to a general practitioner, okay?
Right.
Going to a cardiologist,
Yeah.
going to other specialists for whatever it may be.
Mhm.
And they're treating a patient from the time, let's say in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, they're practicing now many, many years. They do not, or do they recommend going to see somebody like yourself?
Great question. So the question, just to make sure everyone here it is, we're talking about all these risk factors. Go to see a cardiologist, a primary care doctor, to talk about blood pressure and cholesterol and blood sugar. Do they recommend going to see a doctor like me? So I can tell you that last Monday, a study came out for the first time, showing that the first time proving that people in their 30s with high cholesterol and high blood sugar, those people are at an increased risk of cognitive decline and dementia 20 to 30 years later. So the reason that people in their 30s are not being told to see doctors like me yet is because the research proving that Alzheimer's disease begins in the brain decades before the first symptom of memory loss starts. That data, those research studies are just coming out. Alzheimer's disease is a life course disease. People with an Alzheimer's gene, we talked about genetics, that increases risk, are born with brains that are smaller at birth. Imagine that. There was a study in nuns that wrote autobiographical sketches in their teens. And depending on the word choice and sentence structure and complexity, the lower the complexity and the less, high level word choice, correlated with an increased risk of dementia 60 years later. Okay, so most physicians that you will see will never think about sending a 30-year-old or a 40-year-old, or even correlating that blood pressure, cholesterol, and blood sugar have anything to do with cognition in someone's 20s, 30s, 40s, or even 50s. I think when physicians start looking at these vascular risk factors, and when someone's in their 60s, 70s, and 80s, that's when they may, ring a bell. There's a study called the Framingham study. Has anyone heard about that? It's a major heart study out of Massachusetts, Framingham, Massachusetts. That study for the last 10 or 20 years has shown that these vascular changes that are checked by primary care doctors can correlate with cognitive decline in someone's 80s, but when they're diagnosed in the 60s. So that's been known for a while. Medicare, finally, after years and years, now requires a cognitive screen at an annual visit. The doctor gets about $11 to do it. So that's problematic, but there is a cognitive screen that's at least suggested at the wellness visit, but it's tricky. It takes time and it's not well reimbursed. So I think as our science expands, we're going to be moving the spectrum of analyzing a modifiable risk factor, because that's what we're talking about here, identifying something that puts people at higher risk for Alzheimer's disease, identifying that as early as possible, and then doing something about it to live longer and live better in terms of cognitive function. You mentioned genetics again. I just want to touch on that for a second. Genetics is a non-modifiable risk factor. Can't choose your parents. I don't think so. I don't think you can choose your parents. You can't change your age, although there's Botox. Where's the Fountain of Youth? That's in St. Augustine or something? Okay, well, we can take a field trip to St. Augustine. Doesn't work, no. Well, Botox can help a little. Not those in gel, lip injections. People do some weird stuff nowadays. No, okay. But age and genetics you can't change, but there are modifiable risk factors that you can change, and we're going to talk about those in just a little bit. I saw a question somewhere. Yes.
Oh, thank you. I actually have two questions. My first question is that the major pharmaceuticals have certainly been making a great effort to come up with medications, and they've been very unsuccessful, whether it's Pfizer or what have you. No major breakthroughs, and they're putting huge resources. Do we have anything on the horizon coming up that looks promising? And the second question is, what effect, positive or negative, does exercise have, which increases the blood flow to the brain? I've read reports and studies that show that people who exercise routinely have less issues with this particular ailment.
Great, great questions. So those are two of among the most important questions I'm going to cover. So 99.6% of all Alzheimer's disease drug trials have failed. Okay, let me tell a quick story. So when I was in Miami back in 2007, we were enrolling people into the best and brightest, the new study that we were giving a drug to get rid of amyloid. And amyloid is this protein. It's a pathologic protein. It's a sticky plaque that builds up in the brain of people with Alzheimer's, and it builds up over decades. And this was the first time in 2007 we had a drug to get rid of amyloid. So we would enroll people in the trials and we would give them the infusion, and 50% would get the real thing and 50% would get the placebo. And the study failed. So we were disappointed. You know the problem with that study? We didn't have a way to check whether or not the person truly had amyloid in their brain. So we went back after the study ended, and the team of investigators, because in that time, by 2011, we now have a test, a study, a PET scan, where we can look for amyloid in the brain. 40% of the people in the trial didn't even have amyloid in their brain. So for almost a decade, we were giving people drugs without being able to prove that they actually had Alzheimer's disease. So that was one problem. Another problem with the drugs is we were giving people with moderate and severe dementia drugs and expecting the drugs to take away the brain shrinkage that had been going on for decades. So the problem with the drug trials is, one, didn't work, but why? It didn't work because it wasn't treating the right disease. It wasn't given at the right time. But I think what's going to happen with Alzheimer's and other drug trials and dementia, we're going to have to start before symptoms. And that's what we're doing now. And that's why I'm an Alzheimer's prevention specialist. There's a study called the A345 study. I don't know why they called it that, but it's called the A3-45 study. And people without symptoms can now be checked for amyloid in their brain or even amyloid in their blood. We're now doing amyloid blood tests. You probably haven't heard of that yet, but we are. And we can do amyloid blood tests if the blood test is positive, just like a cholesterol test. You know, we do HDL and LDL cholesterol, which is a cardiovascular test. We're going to be doing amyloid blood tests. If that's positive, we're going to do a brain scan. If the brain scan is positive, then we're going to give someone the anti-amyloid drug before symptoms begin. And that's hopefully how we're going to, put a dent in Alzheimer's. So that's why the drug companies have failed. And a lot of drug companies have actually abandoned Alzheimer's, unfortunately, because of this. Your second question, I'm checking my memory. Yes, it was exercise. And exercise is, so I just talked about amyloid, that bad protein. What's the one thing that anyone in this room can do today to impact the amount of amyloid in their brain tomorrow? Exercise, you got it. Exercise is the only thing that we have today that any one of us can do that's been shown to actually impact amyloid levels in the brain. That's pretty profound. It's the most strongest recommendation that I give to people. The tricky thing here is, what do you mean by exercise? And I mean anything is better than nothing. Walking is better than sitting. Walking for 30 minutes is better than 10. Walking more rapidly in a pair of supportive tennis or running shoes or walking shoes, walking more rapidly for 45 minutes is better than walking slowly for 30 minutes. That's better than nothing. Building strength and maintaining muscle mass is critical. Whether we use light weights, whether we use body weight exercises, whether we do gentle stretching, that can also help a little bit with muscle maintenance, maybe not muscle building, but incorporating a combination of cardiovascular training as well as strength training are the two critical things. Walking fast is good, but walking fast on an incline, on a treadmill, for example, is even better because that gets your heart rate up even more. In certain people, depending on their genetics, require a more intense level of exercise to have the same level of brain benefit. Different people with different genes need a different exercise prescription. Different people with different genes also need to eat a little bit differently. Different people with different genes are going to require different medications. This is the concept of personalized health or precision medicine. And I think a lot of the reasons why people were studied in terms of, failure after failure after failure in terms of these research studies is because everyone was getting a one-size-fits-all approach, when the future of medicine is not one-size-fits-all. It's not everyone is going to get a Lipitor, or everyone's going to be on a Crestor or a Tenolol or, I don't know, Prozac or Protonix, right? No. One day, very soon, we're going to take a piece of our blood and we're going to put it into a little machine, and then it's going to spit out a set of recommendations that tells that person what they need to do versus people on average. Because all the research studies that are done are lots of people like you, averaged in a database, statistics are done, and they say Lipitor works to lower cholesterol. And that means that on average, Lipitor is going to work. But different people have different abilities to absorb cholesterol, produce cholesterol. Some people, you can lower cholesterol maybe too much, and that can affect brain health. So the take-home point with all of this is exercise is the number one thing a person can do, mixing it up to different types of exercise, but there really isn't one perfect exercise plan for each individual person. Working with a physical therapist, if that person has limitations, working with a personal trainer that's certified is really critical, and socialization and exercise together will always have more bang for the buck. And they've actually done research studies in animals. Dogs, for example, when they randomize groups of dogs, and dogs get Alzheimer's, they do, it's called canine cognitive function disorder. They lose their bones, they don't lose their bones. But when you do studies on dogs with Alzheimer's, this is actually real research, excellent, eloquent research from out of Southern California. The dogs that exercise alone versus dogs that got to exercise in groups, socialization and exercise, the dogs that exercise had brain outcomes 2 years better than dogs that didn't exercise. The dogs that exercised with both socialization and exercise had outcomes that are 3 years better. Okay, so the combination is key. It's the biological principle of synergy. 1 + 1 = 3. So exercise is critical, but it's nuanced. Socialization, critical. Staying engaged is critical. Having a sense of purpose is critical. The countries with the earliest retirement age also are the countries that have the earliest onset of cognitive decline, believe it or not. France actually has the youngest retirement age and also the youngest on average per capita onset of cognitive decline. So it's okay to retire and it's okay to kick back, but staying engaged, having a sense of purpose, doing something, doesn't have to be every day, but every week, making a contribution to people, to your loved ones, to volunteering, whatever it is, building something, being a part of something is critical to brain health and outcomes. So, yeah.
I have a question about diet. So can you eat too much fish because of mercury in the fish, or what's recommended?
Sure, I can repeat that. So the question was a question about diet. Great, I can talk about this. I've written a couple of books. I'm retired from writing books, but the last book I wrote was on diet and the brain, and can talk about this for a long time. Can you eat too much fish? So if I had to talk about what's the best way to eat to protect brain health, it's the Mediterranean style diet, okay? Fish are plentiful in omega-3 fatty acids, which are very protective on the brain. Fish, you may have heard of fish oil, the supplements that you take. Well, fish oil comes from fish. The fish eat the algae. The algae have omega-3 fatty acids, which are good fats. We eat the fish or we get the fish oil. We can actually just get it straight from the algae also. But omega-3 fatty acids are the brain protective properties in fish. So eating fish at least twice a week is brain protective. The question is can you eat too much fish? And this is an important question because people say, well, what about mercury? Mercury's bad, right? And there's a lot of mercury in things like swordfish, and maybe you don't want to eat tuna fish more than 3 times a week or twice, whatever it is, right? The studies are actually confusing about this. They actually did studies and they did brain scans looking at how much mercury is in a person's brain. The higher the mercury, the lower the likelihood of Alzheimer's disease. Well, how does this make any sense? It makes sense because that means the person was eating a whole lot of fish, which was protective against Alzheimer's, but maybe mercury is going to cause other problems. So, as my mom says, who lives right down the road, Glades, she says everything in moderation. Okay? Eating fatty fish at least twice. I usually shoot for 2 to 3 times a week. Things like wild salmon, much better than farm-raised salmon. Albacore tuna, once, maybe twice a week. Wild salmon, once or easily twice a week. Sardines, mackerel, lake trout, herring. These are things that are very high in omega-3 fatty acids. So eating plentiful is critical, but reducing the fish that are high in mercury, like swordfish. If you have swordfish, I don't know, once every 6 months, it's not a big deal. If you're having swordfish once a week or twice a week, that's a lot of mercury. So these are the conceptual shifts. When it comes to the Mediterranean style diet, the other part that I want to add is that green leafy vegetables have been isolated as the part of the Mediterranean style diet that have the greatest brain boosting effects. Wine in moderation, and usually now that some new research has come out, less is definitely more. Drinking 1 glass of red wine with a meal, as long as it's greater than 3 to 4 to 5 hours before bed, so that we can digest and metabolize the wine. Otherwise, alcohol before bed may get you to sleep, but you're not going to have well restful sleep and restorative sleep. So berries are critical. Blueberries and strawberries, half a cup, 2 to 3 times a week is what we recommend. And red meat in moderation, once a week, maybe twice a week or so. If you're going to choose red meat, then you have the option. Can you choose grass-fed beef? Because it's higher in omega-3s. The cows eat the grass have omega-3s, and that's more protective when it comes to brain health. So at every moment along the brain healthy eating journey, you can make even more brain healthy choices. Does that make sense? Okay, great. Question back there, and then I'll get to you.
Yes, my question is, if the mercury is basically ocean-fed salmon, why isn't there more? Hold on.
Sure, I'm just going to grab a microphone. Hold on one second.
My question is, if the ocean-fed salmon is more exposed to mercury, wouldn't that, if you have farm-raised fish, could you control the amount of mercury and just only benefit from the fatty fat?
So the question is about wild salmon and mercury contents versus farm-raised salmon and mercury contents. So farm-raised salmon, believe it or not, is much higher in mercury and much lower in omega-3s. Farm-raised salmon, the problem is that they're raised in basically a farm. And what are they eating? They're eating each other's poop, and they're getting feed, which is not the natural algae that grows in the ocean. So because of that, the mercury is actually a little higher. I'm not exactly sure about the science behind that, but the omega-3 levels are lower. So while ocean fish are, we have polluted oceans and plastics, and that's not perfect. Ocean fish, wild salmon is still safer and better.
How do you know what we're getting?
Yeah. How do we know what we're getting? Yeah, good luck. They'll tell you it's wild. The only way to be certain is to buy it from a reputable place yourself and cook it yourself. Most of the time you get these types of fish in restaurants, it's going to be farm-raised salmon because it's cheaper. Atlantic salmon at a good quality place, fresh market, no commercial affiliations with any fish companies or supplement company. I wish I did because I pay off my student loans much more quickly. But I don't know. I think you just have to go to a more reputable place, and it's usually more expensive. So. You can try to ask. Maybe start the conversation and ask. It's tricky. These are. I mean, I still rather you eat farm-raised salmon than red meat that's not as healthy either. So it's all a balance. But plant-based plus fish is probably the healthiest way to eat. I saw a question right there. Yeah.
In 1985, Dr. Mayu
Mhm.
had Presbyterian,
Uh-huh.
but my mother on Pfizer stigmine.
Uh-huh.
And for the next 5 years, she did not deteriorate at all.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, look.
Yeah.
And they took it off the market. I was rather surprised.
Yeah. Yeah. So the question is, and you mentioned that in 1985, Dr. Richard Mayu, who is the chairman of neurology at Columbia now, also one of the New York Presbyterian hospitals, he put her mother on a drug called physostigmine, and that didn't help. It helped her not decline for 5 years. So physostigmine is a symptomatic drug that can help with cognitive function in people with Alzheimer's disease because it tries to boost the memory chemical in the brain. There are currently 4 FDA-approved drugs that work on brain chemicals. Physostigmine was an older one that was, I think it was taken off the market because of safety issues. I'm not exactly sure. Physostigmine had a lot of, I think, GI side effects or nausea or something. Some people tolerated it just fine and other people got sick. So I think this was one of the cases where this was just 1985 was so early in our understanding of Alzheimer's. We didn't even know what it was. We didn't know about the amyloid. We didn't know how to do anything. So we've come a long way in the treatment of Alzheimer's. At least we have 4 different options, but we don't have a magic pill that's perfect. The other thing is that different drugs work differently in different people. This aspect of personalization or precision, this precision aspect of care wasn't really thought about till at least the 90s or 2000s. And now it's basically everything that we do. I think we have one question here.
Some of the other medical problems like Parkinson, are they related?
Okay, great. Well, I can repeat it. So the question was about some of the other medical problems like Parkinson's disease, are they related? So I mentored someone named Dr. Kellyanne Niotis, and I knew her since she was a medical student. And as they say, the student surpasses the teacher. And Dr. Niotis at Weill Cornell and New York Presbyterian just this past summer started the first Parkinson's prevention clinic in the United States. And she also focuses on Lewy body prevention too. So the question is are they related? And what I would say is Alzheimer's and Parkinson's are different diseases. They're both brain diseases, but they're different pathologies, different problematic proteins. In Alzheimer's, it's amyloid and tau protein. In Parkinson's, it's something called alpha-synuclein. Parkinson's is harder to prevent right now. Parkinson's is even more confusing because it's more genetically diverse in some ways than Alzheimer's. And the 2 most common genes related to Parkinson's, we don't have as many tools for to fight the negative effects of those genes, as we do on the most common gene of Alzheimer's. So Parkinson's prevention is at least 4 to 6 years behind the field of Alzheimer's. Is Parkinson's a preventable disease? I would say yes in many cases, but I don't know how many. Is it 30%? That's a lot, better than 0. Is it 25%? Is it 20? I would say somewhere around there. With Alzheimer's disease, the latest evidence suggests that at least 4 out of every 10 cases of Alzheimer's may be preventable if that person does everything right in terms of modifiable risk factors. So stay tuned on Parkinson's. Yep.
On the question of diet, there were 3 questions. One is, what can we do as individuals? What can Harbor's Edge do? And what can our government do? And each of those subjects are complex. For instance, in the government area, we have to deal with the processed food industry that is constantly serving a lot of junk that is hurting people. In the individual area, this is where I'd like your opinion. I have the impression, the hypothesis, not conviction, that among the things, well, one that is definite, ending sugar, doing away with sugar, which is a poison, lowering carbohydrates and eating good fats. That's the other thing is, my impression is that there is evidence that intermittent fasting has benefits. I'll particularly leave that with you. My other question, which is I'm addressing to Harbor's Edge, is what they can do to improve diets, which means getting rid of a lot of the junk food where possible and incorporating healthy desserts in place of junk desserts. So those are the several ranging questions.
Yeah, so these questions are really a topic that I talk about a lot, and I got a lot of questions about. So what happened is, here we go again, our government made a decision several years ago about something called a food pyramid. And the biggest part of the pyramid was carbohydrates. And they said carbohydrates are good because fat is bad, because there was some cardiologist that did some research and that also happened to have some, commercial collaboration with a company called Kellogg's and a company called General Mills and a company called every breakfast cereal you've ever eaten that's loaded with sugar. And he was funded by these cereal companies. True story. So this person became basically somewhere between a charlatan and whatever else, and published all these studies showing that whole grains and grains in the morning are better than fat, and fat is bad. And again, everything in moderation. Let's start by that. Carbs are not the enemy, but I don't eat that many carbs. I had a turkey burger today for lunch, and it has breadcrumbs in it, but I didn't have a bun. Okay, I need some breadcrumbs and I need some carbs because I'm going to exercise later. Okay, I'm going to go on my Peloton bike later. I'm going to do a 45-minute ride because gotta stay active. Try to exercise 4 to 5 times a week. And tonight is my 45-minute Peloton ride. And you need carbs. What is it? I'm sorry. So, and you need carbohydrates so that when I'm exercising and moving around, I don't want to burn muscle and lose muscle mass. But our society eats way too many carbs. And sugars and sugars and sugars are in everything. There's sugars in ketchups. There's sugars in there's sugars in things that you would never think there's sugar in. So watching sugar, watching carbohydrates, and the ELF diet. Ever heard of the ELF diet? Eat less food. Okay. Lots of people eat way too much. Okay. And I think when it comes to, settings like this where there's, an abundance of, you could order what you want. And, I think it's hard to balance. And I think, we don't want people to lose weight, especially as we age. So we want to maintain weight for sure. So I think the balance between carbohydrates and fats got really out of whack decades ago because of some, poorly designed and executed research. When it comes to healthy fats, people are not having enough olive oil. People are not eating enough avocados. People are not having enough of the healthy fats, monounsaturated fats. I often say you need to drink olive oil, and I'm not actually kidding. Having a shot of olive oil, more than 2 tablespoons of olive oil a day. And if you have the fat with the carbohydrates, it slows the digestion. If you have a salad, it's carbs. Lettuce is salad. Lettuce and salad is carbohydrates, but they're complex, they're fibrous, so it slows digestion. Then you add the olive oil, and it makes it even more healthy. So, desserts, am I anti-dessert? I'm somewhere in the middle. I love chocolate ice cream. If I'm gonna go eating chocolate ice cream, okay? But I can eat chocolate ice cream because I'm gonna have a dinner with sufficient protein and fat, so that when I have the chocolate ice cream, 1 scoop instead of 3, my blood sugar doesn't spike and my digestion is slow enough to where I can control the negative effects. And I track everything. And I think one day, your children and grandchildren will be doing this probably pretty regularly. But I titrate my diet to my blood sugar and to my really physiology. So I track myself. I have a little device here that's in my side. You said you have my cell phone. You can check my blood sugar at any time. My blood sugar is probably around 80 or 90 right now, I'm guessing. I understand what my pulse is, what my recovery was based on my exercise and my sleep last night. And basically, depending on what my biosensors, they're called basically wearable biosensors and continuous glucose monitors, I'm trying to eat, exercise, and sleep and perform based on what the devices are telling me to do, because they have a literal pulse on the internal parts of my body, as well as my brain. So nutrition is something that's gotten really, really out of whack in this country. Processed food is everywhere. Processed food is basically anything that you can find that can sit on a shelf for a long time. Eating fresh whole foods, nuts, vegetables, berries, things that are, in a refrigerator, for example, are oftentimes much, much, much healthier. But it's hard. We travel, having those snack bars and having, all these, bags of potato chips and whatever else, and ice cream. I like Malamars. I don't know if you guys know what Malamars are. I like Malamars is my guilty pleasure. I put them in the freezer and I have one here and there. You know about the freezer and the Malamars. That's the good. And I dissect. I eat the dark chocolate first, and I'm weird. I really take my time with the Malamars. But I'll have 1 Malamar. Okay, sometimes 2. Okay, sometimes 3, but not more than 3. Like I will cut it off at 3. So again, it's about everything in moderation. It's about knowing your own body. And if you're going to be doing exercise anyway, it's okay to have some carbs. But there's good carbs and bad carbs, good fats and bad fats. You need to know the difference. So great question.
What about people who use their time to do memory and mind games, like if you do crossword puzzles or stuff like that? Has there been shown any evidence that that has a positive effect?
Great. So the question is about doing mind games and brain puzzles. So you can do all the Sudoku you want. You're just going to get better at Sudoku. Does that mean I tell people not to do Sudoku? Well, no. If you enjoy doing Sudoku and if you enjoy doing puzzles, then great. Crosswords may have some degree of spillover, meaning you do a cognitive activity. Does it have a spillover effect in brain protection and building backup pathways? Maybe a little with crosswords, but the main thing that we recommend in order to age well as our brains continue to age with us is that we must learn something new. Learning a new language, going to an adult education class, coming to lectures, learning how to play a musical instrument, playing musical instruments, listening to musical instruments, writing one's autobiography. These are things that can be done to have a research-proven spillover effect in terms of having better brain health outcomes as we age. I did want to touch on one thing because you're in the know, and you mentioned fasting, intermittent fasting. I'm going to flip around the semantics a little bit, but I'm going to introduce you to a term, and it's called the initials are TRE, time restricted eating. People were not meant to be eating around the clock, okay? There weren't vending machines around in the caveman times, okay? There is no reason that people need to eat every few hours. It just there's no biological reason to my knowledge. We don't want people to lose weight, but if people want to live longer in terms of age longevity and live better with a healthy brain, eating less food and having periods of what I like to call time restricted eating, whether it's 10 hours overnight, 12 hours overnight. I do 14 to 16 minimum on most nights, and sometimes 16 to 18. I think one has to be very careful about this as we age, because if someone is underweight at baseline and doesn't have enough body fat to, fuel the system, maybe you want to stick with 8 to 10 to 12 hours maximum overnight as a time to restrict eating. And again, if you have diabetes or problems with blood sugar, the last thing you need to do is not eat enough. So this is a very individualized thing. But eating less food, like people in Okinawa, the blue zones, Hari Hachibu is the Confucianism saying, eat until you're only 80% full. The key here is that eat until you're only 80% full, because it takes a while for the belly sensors to say, stop, you're eating too much, right? So eating less is okay, but we don't want to lose too much weight, especially as we age. The term intermittent fasting is a term I reserve for people that are fasting like 24 hours or more. That's a semantic argument, but intermittent fasting in people above the age of 65 needs to be done in the supervision of a medical professional, just to be extra safe. Okay, how are we doing on time? Oh, wow. We're rocking and rolling. Okay, I think we have time for one or two more questions. Yes.
Is there really something called sundowners?
Great question. So is there something called sundowners? Sundowner syndrome is something where someone with usual cognitive changes or cognitive decline, dementia, early dementia, when the sun goes down, the sleep-wake cycles get turned upside down and go on their head. So sundowner syndrome is oftentimes when a person, for example, has dementia but has an infection, or when someone has any infection or some sort of urinary tract infection, a pneumonia, getting over a cold, where it can kind of mess up the brain and mess up the sleep-wake cycles to where someone likes to stay awake and agitated and hyper alert at night, and they want to sleep during the day. So sundowner syndrome does exist more commonly in people that have medical conditions, acute medical conditions, or dementia. But if someone's getting sundowners and they don't have medical problems, then that would confuse me a little bit. So.
I read recently that on the cell.
Okay, hold on a second.
Okay. On my cell, I read recently that there was a patch coming out for Alzheimer's.
Yep.
Is there any merit to that?
Yeah, actually, yeah. So I was actually, a few years ago, I was a scientific advisor to this company. So they paid me like $2,500, which is like 0.01% of my student loan. So I didn't feel guilty. But I flew to Chicago. I remember this was before the pandemic. So in the days we used to go to meetings in person, scientific meetings. And this is a company that was trying to put together a patch, a memory patch, that a person could wear for a week at a time. Because when someone has cognitive trouble and you're changing a patch every day, it gets a little confusing. So in 2007, there was a memory patch called the Exelon patch or the rivastigmine patch that was approved in the United States, but it was tricky because you have to change it every day. You have to increase the doses, and some people had side effects of weight loss and things like that. This new patch is a weekly patch. I think it's called Adlarity or something like that. I'm not exactly sure. It was just FDA approved within the last week or two. And it's for people with mild, moderate, and maybe severe Alzheimer's disease dementia. And you put on one patch, and it slowly, gives the drug into the system, absorbing it, and it tries to mimic how the neurochemicals should be in the brain. Instead of taking a pill where it goes like this and like this, the patch can slowly give the drug through the system. More question?
What can you tell us about the drugs that they advertise to help you focus more, like Prevagen and some of those?
Great question. That's a great question to end on. And thanks so much again, everyone, for coming today and your attention. I think we covered a lot of ground. Before I answer this question, because this is a great question to end on, I want to make everyone aware. If you want to hear me blabbing about this topic, about nutrition and genetics and this and that, Florida Atlantic University and I put together a series of about 20 5 to 10 minute videos that can be accessed on your phone, on your computer, whatever. And it's easy to find. And I hopefully the website is there. If not, it's findable. FAU, Florida Atlantic University, faumedicine.org. Oh, I will. Oh, I won't forget. I won't forget. Don't worry. I'm on. I got. faumedicine.org/ALZ, like Alzheimer's. faumedicine.org/ALZ. You click the brain health course, and you'll get all these questions answered online. Yep. Oh, it's on there. Great, David. The wind beneath my wings. That's what I like to hear. So the question is about Prevagen and all these other supplements. This is a very long topic. So I have a 10-minute video talking just about this topic online, but Prevagen is not the first thing that I would recommend. It's expensive. The data are extremely underwhelming. There was one study funded by the drug company. No memory doctor that I know of prescribes it or recommends it. Those commercials are confusing to me. I don't even know how people get away with those commercials. I do believe in certain vitamins and supplements, but again, it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. The general category of things that I do often recommend are things like B-complex vitamins, vitamin D, omega-3 fatty acids, and those are really the core of what I oftentimes recommend. There are a few other supplements out there, yeah, watch the videos because this is not a question I can answer in 2 or 5 or even 10 minutes. One more question, okay.
Would you recommend sex as a?
So as an evidence-based answer, I wish my wife was here. She needs to listen to this. Yes, please, you're killing me. Christine, can you call Christine, please? So, sorry. I've been on the couch for a few weeks, so, okay. So, okay. How do I give an evidence-based answer to this? I don't know that there's an evidence-based answer to this, but medicine is both an art and a science. So the doctor says that yes, I would say that sex and sexual activity are good for having a personal connection with someone is also physical activity. So while I don't have a great evidence answer, I would say it's more likely than not, a legal term, that it's a positive for brain and body health. So, and good health, exactly. So thank you guys so much.
Thank you so much for coming. Thank you very much. Very, very much. And he's going to be with us for a few minutes at the reception. If anybody has any private question that won't take an hour and a half, say hello to him. And also be aware. Sorry. Also, be aware that this is just the beginning of a longer-term relationship that we're going to have with him. And so, stay tuned.
Hello, everybody. Jordan here in the blue has a sign-up sheet. Dr. Issacson's clinic isn't quite open yet, but if you would like his folks to reach back to you, you can give her your name and information. Thank you.
Yes. Oh, I don't know, but that's that's what they do when they take something. It's just something that's. Oh, of course. I was thinking of going today, but
I don't know your numbers, but yeah, maintain weight. For the, yeah, that burn you
They're just so Oh, yes. We're not to find out when my dinner is. She doesn't listen. She lives till 5. Well, yeah, I'll see you at 8.
then I'll just go to your place right next to it.
He's good. He was good. I'm done. I thought he was. Yeah, no, I'm just trying to get. I thought, I congratulate you for seeing that and feeling that. See, that's what I say. Right.
But I would love to hear about it until someone gets to listen to what's being said. That's what you have to buy, you sold it, that makes it. I think I did like that for it. I didn't know what one year.
Oh, okay, okay. Did you order the car? I could take you to.
Oh, yeah, I know she kind of snuck away, I'm not sure what year she was up to, your time.
See ya. You know what? Read this and you can give it back to me.
Oh, tomorrow, okay.
Yeah, you can have
Oh, yeah.
the little one.
Okay.
That's an incredible group.
Right.
When are you leaving?
Tomorrow night. Like that. I think my flight's at 6.
Okay.
Yeah. I know, I was trying to move it, but.
Yeah, it's all right, but I just want you to be aware of it because maybe we can get some money from them.
Oh, right. Well, and maybe one of these times we can,
Yeah. Very good.
So when you come in for meetings like this, to hear somebody like this?
Well, I was actually, yesterday, Jake Holker. I threw down last night, because, this was happening, and then I just felt the day after that. So. Oh my goodness, he's very. Well, I think Nancy first.
All right, thank you. I think I was very distracted because I had a very busy on phone with people today, so that's my head. See you tomorrow. Yeah. Carol's still out there. I had this for her to take to Barry. So she's there, but Barry is seated. Tonight she's going out with him. Where's
Yeah, she's not.
I'm stressed. You know, Diane. I'm stressed. I'll be ready in 20 minutes. All right, bye. I'm just gonna be alone.
Okay.